Laurence Fishburne has spent decades captivating audiences as one of Hollywood's most powerful presences. From the wisdom of Morpheus to the strength of furious styles, he's portrayed characters of depth and dignity. But behind the iconic performances lies a complex personal journey, one marked by childhood wounds, difficult relationships, and the ongoing search for peace. Remember to like and subscribe as a tribute to one of Hollywood's most unforgettable legends. Born July 30th, 1961, in Augusta, Georgia, Laurence John Fishburne III entered what appeared to be a stable family. His father was a correctional officer, his mother, Hattie Bell, an elementary school teacher. But when Laurence was just 5 years old, his parents divorced. Hattie moved them to Brooklyn, New York, starting over in a cramped third-floor apartment. While she worked tirelessly, teaching by day, grading papers by night, young Laurence grew up largely without his father. The occasional visits eventually stopped altogether. "My mother was the strongest woman I've ever known," Fishburne later recalled, "but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes every night." Brooklyn in the 1970s was unforgiving. While other children played, the local library became his sanctuary. Rows of books where he could disappear into other lives, other worlds. But it was the theater that truly saved him. At 10, Hattie took him to see a play. She'd saved for weeks to afford the tickets. As the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, something inside young Laurence awakened. On that stage, people became someone else entirely. They felt enormous emotions. They mattered. "I want to do that," he told his mother on the subway home. Hattie looked at her son's serious face and made a decision that would shape both their lives. She took him to auditions. She gathered nearly every spare dollar, money meant for a winter coat, for fixing the leaky faucet, for her own small pleasures, and enrolled him in acting classes. At 11, Laurence landed his first role in an off-Broadway production. Standing among adult actors, this small black boy with the serious eyes delivered his lines with an intensity that startled everyone in the room. The stage became the one place where his loneliness transformed into something beautiful. "I had to grow up faster than my age," he said. The stage became his refuge, a place where loneliness could transform into art. In 1975, 14-year-old Fishburne lied about his age to secure a role in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. While his peers attended high school, he spent 2 years in the Philippine jungle amid fake gunfire and real danger. "I saw too many things a child shouldn't see," he later admitted. When the film premiered in 1979 and won the Palme d'Or, Fishburne was 17, but felt decades older. The experience had stolen what remained of his childhood, leaving him quiet and withdrawn. Throughout his late teens and early 20s, he worked steadily. Stage productions, television roles, small films. Friends noted he rarely laughed. Each performance seemed like armor against an inner emptiness. The early 1980s found Fishburne living alone in New York, caught between two identities. He was an actor who'd appeared in one of the decade's most acclaimed films, yet he was also a teenager who'd never had a normal adolescence. He rented a tiny apartment, barely 9 square meters, and survived on instant noodles for weeks at a time. Auditions came sporadically. Rejections came constantly. He took small roles on soap operas like One Life to Live, learning his craft in the unglamorous trenches of daytime television. Friends from this period remember him as intensely private. He didn't party. He didn't chase fame. He seemed to be building something inside himself, brick by brick, using the only materials he had: discipline, talent, and an almost frightening determination. "I learned that if you act well, people will love you," he once said. In real life, that's not always true. Without a father to teach him how to be a man, Fishburne taught himself through observation and trial and error. He studied other actors, their techniques, their choices, their careers. He read voraciously. He trained his voice, his body, his instrument. The question that haunted him during these years was simple but consuming. Who was he, really, beneath all the roles? The 1990s brought Fishburne the recognition he'd worked toward. In 1991, he starred in John Singleton's Boys and the Hood as Furious Styles, a model father teaching his son about honor and responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on Fishburne, who'd never known such a father himself. His portrayal of Ike Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It, 1993, earned an Oscar nomination. That same year, he won both a Tony Award for Two Trains Running and an Emmy for Tribeca. At 32, he stood alongside Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman as one of Hollywood's most respected actors. "I had to change my name from Larry to Laurence just to be taken seriously," he reflected. One single letter, but an entire battle. Then came The Matrix, 1999. As Morpheus, Fishburne became a global icon. The film grossed over $463 million worldwide and cemented his place in cinema history. Yet success brought its own challenges. "Morpheus is who I wish I could be. Calm, wise, grounded," he confessed. "But in real life, I'm nothing like him." In 1985, Fishburne married actress Hajna Moss. They had 2 children, Langston and Montana. But behind closed doors, the marriage deteriorated. Fishburne has spoken candidly about this period with brutal honesty. "I abused my wife," he stated in a 2022 interview. "That's the thing I regret most in my life. I let anger control me." The couple divorced in the early 1990s. Fishburne spent years in therapy learning to manage his anger and understand its roots in his own childhood abandonment. "I spent 4 or 5 years in therapy to learn how to control my anger," he explained. "I had to recognize what triggered it and how to stop before it was too late." His role as Ike Turner came shortly after his divorce, forcing him to confront his own capacity for harm. "I knew exactly how Ike felt when he lost control. I knew the shame that came afterward, because I had been him." In 2010, Fishburne faced perhaps his most public pain when his daughter Montana, at 18, entered the adult film industry and made headlines announcing her intentions. The media explosion was immediate and cruel. Fishburne's response was to cut contact. "You've brought shame to me," he told her. "Don't call me again until you change." The estrangement lasted nearly a decade. Montana continued making headlines: arrests for assault, DUI, and battery. Each incident reopened the wound. "I love her, but I can't save her," Fishburne said in 2016. In 2024, a photograph emerged: father and daughter embracing quietly in Los Angeles. No statements were released, but the image suggested tentative reconciliation. "She's very strong," Fishburne now says softly, when asked about Montana. In 2002, Fishburne married actress Gina Torres. She seemed to bring him the peace he'd been seeking. They had a daughter, Delilah, in 2007. "She's the first person who's ever made me feel I don't have to act anymore," he said at the time. But by 2016, they had quietly separated. Their divorce was finalized in 2018. "There are no bad guys here," Torres stated, "just a love story that ended differently than we had hoped." They continue to co-parent Delilah respectfully, but for Fishburne, it marked another chapter of loss. "Love doesn't die," he reflected. "It just changes shape. And sometimes, it leaves to make room for peace." In 2025, appearing on PBS's Finding Your Roots, Fishburne received shocking news. The man he'd called father his entire life was not his biological parent. DNA testing revealed his true father, a stranger whose face appeared on screen for the first time. The man had already passed away. Fishburne closed his eyes, tears falling, and whispered, "Hello, Father," a greeting more than 60 years too late. "I feel less alone now," he said. "I no longer have to wonder where I belong." The revelation also introduced him to a half-sister he'd never known existed. In 2015, Fishburne's mother, Hattie Bell, then 80, spoke publicly about feeling abandoned by her son. She claimed they hadn't spoken in over a year and that she received no financial support. "I helped him for 20 years, and now I don't get a penny," she told reporters. Fishburne remained silent, offering no public response. The incident damaged his public image, though friends suggested the situation was more complicated than headlines suggested. He starred in Aquila and the Bee, 2006, as a devoted mentor, and in Hannibal, 2013 to 2015, as a sharp yet tormented investigator. Each role felt like a confession, an unspoken truth, as if he used his characters to express what words could not. Once, when asked how it felt to be successful, he simply smiled and said, "I don't live to be applauded. I live to remember who I am." That is not the voice of a star, but of a man who has walked through too much light to know that even light can burn. From Apocalypse Now, the film that forced a 14-year-old boy to face a fake war, to The Matrix, where a grown man found himself trapped in a virtual one of his own, Fishburne's journey forms a closed circle. He began with illusion and ended within it. His career, on the surface, is a string of triumphs. But look closer, and between those magnificent frames lies a man forever trying to prove his worth to a world that never fully acknowledged him. The secret of the father who never existed. There are wounds that do not bleed, but seep slowly, silently, never healing. For Laurence Fishburne, that wound bore the name of his father. For decades, he lived under the surname Fishburne, believing he knew where he came from, until one day his entire world collapsed under a brutal truth. The man he had called father all his life was not his biological father. A childhood without a father was already an absence. But discovering, after more than 6 decades, that he carried the blood of a stranger was a blow that even a man as seasoned as Laurence could hardly breathe through. It all began with what seemed like a harmless television program. Finding Your Roots aired in early 2025 on PBS. The host, Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr., took him on a journey to explore his ancestry, something Fishburne believed he already understood. But DNA does not lie. When the picture of the man in the records appeared, Fishburne fell silent for several seconds. On the screen was a stranger's face, yet with eyes identical to his own, deep, heavy, and weary. "This is your biological father," Gates said. The studio went completely still. Fishburne closed his eyes, smiled faintly, and tears fell. He whispered, "Hello, father," a greeting more than 60 years late. That biological father, an unknown man, neither artist nor famous, had long passed away. They had never met, never exchanged a single word. Yet through a photograph, Fishburne saw the missing half of himself. "I feel less alone now," he said on the show. "I no longer have to wonder where I belong." A simple sentence, but one that carried a lifetime of searching. When The Matrix Resurrections premiered in 2021, fans were shocked to find Morpheus absent. Fishburne had not been invited back to the franchise he'd helped build. "I offered, but they didn't respond," he said quietly. That was their decision. Being erased from the world he'd helped create felt like betrayal, a fitting metaphor for a life marked by abandonment and loss. At 63, Laurence Fishburne lives quietly. He takes fewer roles, preferring projects with personal meaning. He walks alone, reads, listens to jazz. "The older I get, the more I realize that fame is nothing you can hold on to at night," he once remarked. He has no ongoing scandals, but also no traditional home. 2 failed marriages, strained family relationships, and decades of trying to outrun his past have left their mark. Yet he continues, not with the fanfare of his youth, but with the quiet dignity of someone who has faced his demons and survived. "I don't live to be applauded," he says. "I live to remember who I am." If this story moved you or sparked curiosity, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the lives of the stars who shaped history. We'll keep bringing you the stories behind the spotlight, the ones you've never heard, but won't forget. And now, we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.